Hi, Bloody Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a horror movie, The Faceless Man. Keep your eyes open and stay focused. A man visits his daughter named Emily. He apologizes to her for everything because he didn't know she had cancer, so he wants to help her in every way he can. But Emily only asks him to go away, and he still stands his ground. Emily has helped herself before and will continue to do so. A man passing by recognizes her father as Harrison, who helps people with cancer. But Emily says the man hasn't helped his own daughter in 6 years, and the man leaves. Emily can no longer hold all her emotions in, so she tells her father what she thinks and leaves. After chemotherapy, Emily is in the bathroom coughing up blood when she realizes what her life is coming to. Tears flow, and then she bangs her head against the mirror. We are transported 3 years into the future, where Emily has conquered her disease and her hair has grown back. Music is heard outside the door as the lights immediately begin to blink and something ugly appears behind Emily. But when she turns around, there is no one there. Outside, Emily is not very happy that Anna has called Dave and Chad to their vacation together. At this time, Jimmy Maxwell is handing out high pills to the guys and asks Dave not to put it in anyone's alcohol or he'll get really hammered, but he's going to get someone drunk on it anyway. Then Jimmy changes the glasses, and when Dave comes back he drinks his own potion, and Jimmy has already been offered a large sum of money to star in a new movie. Emily introduces her friends Chad and Kyle. In general, the guys have a good time, and in the morning they try to remember what happened yesterday. Brad argues with Chad about the latest news about the maniac everyone calls the Axeman. The guys can't remember where Jimmy disappeared to yesterday, and Brad claims the guy has seen a lot, but Jimmy gets beaten with a hammer at this point, and Brad is sure he's okay. The crew thinks the Axeman's real name, Victor Blod, would have looked a lot better in the papers. Bikers pull up to the pub at this time, and the waitress pours Brad the coffee he didn't ask for, and of course he insults her. Then she calls for Barry, who has a nickname in the counties of Barry the Cunt. Nothing serious happens. They are just chased out of the cafe. It turns out Victor Nov is a Russian who has a family of his own. And when the guards come back and say hello to his daughter, he promises his wife to come back soon. And he arrives at Jimmy's, who turns out to have lost his suitcase of cocaine. He asks him for some time. Most likely the suitcase was left in the car of the guys who went out of town, and he knows the house. But Victor cuts his head off with a hammer, and then cuts his neck with a fishing line, and it falls off. And the guards say cheeks and no head. The guys at this time are heading to Orange Lodge, a nice town with nice people. Kyle gets stopped by the police and asks for his license, then asks about the recent cafe scuffle, but Emily replies that they don't know anything. His partner, wearing a helmet, is out watering the flowers. He notices that Emily is suspiciously familiar to him, but they haven't seen each other before. And when Kale asks the officer for his badge, the man asks them not to linger in town and, dropping his ID, calls him an asshole. They arrive at a gas station and Emily runs to the bathroom, where she pulls her hair out of her mouth and then vomits blood. But that's not all. The lights start flickering and her very long fingernails get wrapped around her. Then the lights come on and everything goes back to normal. They arrive at the house where they will spend the entire weekend. The guys go and warn the neighbors that there will be loud music at night, and they agree. But immediately the owner of the house calls them and says there will be no loud music because Nina rents the house. Suddenly a certain man walks into the house who introduces himself as Eddie Silverbird. He bought the house from the owner, so now he owns the place. He hopes the guys weren't going to drink here and have an orgy, but it was just a joke. He offers to walk through the house and show him what's here. Eddie sniffs out his jacket, and the boys notice an axe on the windowsill. In the bedroom, he asks not to go into the workshop under any circumstances. There are repairs going on, so there is an unpleasant smell. He asks them to call his best friend Barry if there's any trouble, and the guys realize it's that biker from the pub and ask them not to call him. Basically, the guys can handle themselves. When he leaves, Dave is already popping pills in the guy's tea, and Emily finds that very suitcase of cocaine in the bedroom. She goes to the workshop door and hides it in the oven, But something tries to burst out from behind the door and the lights start flickering again and the creature touches Emily's hair. She is sick and vomiting blood again. The hour of our liberation is at hand appears on the mirror, and a hand rests on her shoulder. But when she turns around, no one is there again, nor is the writing on the mirror. Nina and Brad argue in the hallways because they couldn't find the briefcase with the cocaine, and Dave asks Nina to calm down and have tea, which makes her even angrier because she didn't come to a tea party. Dave shovels everyone's tea and they notice that it tastes weird, but they realize that if he's added something strong, they're screwed. Emily has already taken the effect because it's only 5 p.m. and it's already dark outside. Emily finds Nina, who is already sniffing around the lanes, and gives her masks to play the game. And Cale already sees a lot of masked girls with whom he goes to bed and they touch him. But then the fog clears and it turns out to be the same monster, and cuts with long claws. In the corridors, Emily drops her mask and sees a faceless man peering out from around the corner. She heads toward him while a dark masked silhouette follows her. There is the exact same one standing in the room, and she tries to get away from them. Emily locks herself in the room and it is morning. Victor NOV at this time arrives at the gas station and finds out where the youth has recently come to, but the cashier demands $95 for the information and the guards beat him up. Victor calls his wife at this time, but she resets. The boys talk about their night visions, and Dave locks himself in the bathroom with Chad during the night. Emily wants to show her the cocaine that Nina snorted mountains of last night, but it turns out to be bath salts that will keep her awake for another couple of days. Chad is missing somewhere and Emily finds a note on the table to kill one, but immediately the roar of the engine is heard outside. It's Barry. When Brad speaks badly to him again, he starts choking him, but Dave apologizes and Barry asks for $95 for his services, because he's here, or the gangbang that Nina desires. Emily gives him $100 without change and he warns him that if he finds out they brought drugs here, they won't like it very much. And Emily goes to check out the workshop, but sees a sheet next to her, under which Chad is dead. A faceless man appears behind her and distracts her attention so that Chad gets up, who repeats the phrase "for what?" But the guys come running in who can't believe it and start thinking that whoever left the note did it. Dave, meanwhile, sees a faceless creature in the mirror, but he's only imagining it. And Emily vomits blood again as Dave walks into the workshop. Victor comes to the bar and asks for an answer, but the bartender asks him to wait. Then Victor yells and the bartender sends him away. The men at the bar start laughing. Then Victor has a bloody brawl right in the bar, after which the bartender still answers where the house is, but the previous owner went crazy in it. Victor leaves the establishment and the bartender calls someone. The girls tell Kyle that Dave and Brad are missing, but a man appears behind them with an axe, which they dodge and run away from, and Kyle leads the man after him. But he is knocked out in the hall and the man is grabbed by masked men. It turns out to be Dave, who is also knocked out with the blunt side of an axe. Anna tries to hide, but finds an axe to swing in the dark and hit Emily. She gets scared she has killed a man, and the guys are tied up at the time as it turns out Eddie and Barry. They call Brad a serial maniac named the Axe who has forgotten his activities because of drugs. So it's time for Barry to teach him a lesson, but he wanted the red-headed Anna. Unfortunately, we'll have to make do with what we have. Eddie tells him that they're not bad. It's just that the guys will have to pay for bringing bad drugs to this good town with good people, drugs that Satan himself invented. And someone killed Chad, so now he'll have to play God and help them. Barry brings Brad back saying he likes redheads better, and they show him the guy who brought drugs into their house last time. Eddie gets sick and goes to the bathroom, but Barry wastes no time and tells Kyle that his parents died because of drugs and starts making himself a sandwich. But there is a secret ingredient left: Brad's arm. He cuts it off. Brad cuts his legs off and wants to attack Barry, but gets shot by Victor's guards, who are attacked immediately by Barry and successfully takes out both of them, but he gets his head blown off by Victor. When Eddie comes out, Victor asks him to sit down, but Eddie is proud, so Victor shoots him in the groin and he sits down. He promises that Victor won't leave here alive. after which he becomes a victim of Victor's chainsaw. The guy in the straitjacket escapes and Victor moves on to Kyle. Anna is still shaking from the murder, but a healthy Emily returns and brings her into the bedroom, and Emily is visited by a visitor who tried to poke her eyes out. But then when she starts screaming at him, her father shows up. The monster attacks her from all sides and Emily tries to fight back. But when a guy in a straitjacket appears behind her, she mistakes him for the monster and stabs him. But underneath the mask turns out to be Dave. She's cornered in hysterics, and Victor carries Kyle out of the basement. He promises to chop him into little pieces and feed him to the dogs if he doesn't tell them where his suitcase is. But he is immediately stopped by Emily, who wants to tell him where the suitcase is. But the price has gone up because he lost his brothers. Now she has to experience the wrath of God. But he gets hit in the head from behind. It turns out to be Inna. Kyle knocks Victor out with medication and ties him up. And Emily in the hallway goes crazy and promises Kyle that they won't be together anymore, which causes him to knock her out as well. She only wakes up when she is already being raped by Kyle. After he finishes, he unties her. She pretends to enjoy it and caresses him, but then slits her throat and vomits weird fluid on him. The mutilated monster returns and hugs Emily, and she imagines it is her father. Nina is still catching panic attacks, and bikers are shooting up the house from the street. And when Nina, Emily, and Victor come out, they send the guys inside to check where Barry and Eddie are, but he finds their dead bodies, for which they take Victor out and chop his head off. And Grandpa remembers where he saw Emily a few years ago when she was arguing with her father in the hallway. After her speech, his wife died a few months later, but he remembered her speech for a long time, so he managed to find his purpose in this town and cleanse it of bad people. And he liked the redhead, so Emily can go alone, but she won't go without Inna. Then Inna is about to be tied to a car, but Emily tries to fight him, and he threatens if she does that again he will gouge her eyes out. And after a while we are shown Emily trying to take out her anger by beating the sand, but when she turns around her eyes don't turn out, which means she struggled, but they didn't give her Inna, and she goes to sea. Support the channel by subscribing, like, and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.